Can you help me read the instructions for examples 1 to 6? Gabby. Just read the instructions, please. Right here. Oh, no, that's already done, hon. So right here, examples 1 to 6. Yeah, solve by factoring. Tomorrow or the next day, we'll learn another way of solving, and then another way of solving, not because we want to torture you, just so that way later you can pick the best way to solve for yourself, okay? Just like solve by, remember we solve by graphing, we solve by substitution, we solve by elimination. Not because we want to torture you, but later in the very end, the goal is, hey, which way is the best, which way is quickest, which is smarter, right? So that's the whole point. We want to expose you to all solving systems. Okay, here we go. Number 1, you have a quantity of x minus 7 times the quantity of 2x plus 3 equals to 0. It says always factor first. Is it already factor? Yes, so all we got to do now is use your zero product property. This is A, this is B. So it's kind of A and B. If A times B equals to 0, either A has to be 0 or B has to be 0. In this case, it's in a factor format. So what we do is we break this out. Either A, which is now x minus 7, has to be 0, or what? 2x plus 3 equals to 0. Okay. And then you solve for it normally. So on the left side, making B sign here. On the left side, Aaron, what would you do to solve for x on the left side? Add 7. You're right. Add 7 to both sides. So x equals to 7. On the right side, what would you do first, Shelby?
Subtract 3.
Right, subtract 3 from both sides, bless you. So now we have 2x equals negative 3. What's your next move here, Nicole? Perfect. X equals to negative 3 over 2. And now we just put it together and then box it up. So x equals negative 3 divided by 2, comma 7. And we box that up. Okay, number 2. Griffin, what should we do first on number 2 when it says solve by factoring? Yes, remember, check the GCF. So Griffin said, hey, take out the 2. So you are now going to be left with what, Allie? If Griffin said 2 need to be factored out? Thank you so much. Okay, so GCF is done. What do you think it's right to do next? What's the next step? Factor, you're right. So class, you need to factor this trinomial. Go ahead and take a moment to factor that trinomial. If factoring using the x is your method, then use your x. If some of you have a whole different way of factoring that, then do that. Make sure you use a pencil, so in a little bit when we come back together to check your factors. So right now, take a minute to factor that out. If x is what you use to factor, then use x. If you factor by guess and check, then guess and check. Take a moment to factor that. Once you have 2 factors, can you check with your neighbors? Right, left, front, back. Because if your factors are incorrect, then you will have incorrect answers. I'm using the X organization system. So raise your hand if you found the 2 side numbers. Shelby? -6 and +4. Okay. So this is now becoming 2 in the front. X squared gets dropped down. The -24 gets dropped down. Equal to 0 gets dropped down. The -2x gets taken out. And what is written in its place instead? Benvi?
The 4x.
Plus 4x. What else?
Minus 6.
Minus 6x. Perfect. Okay. So class, this is where you can factor by grouping. Okay. And if you guys are still struggling with factoring, please come in. I will totally help you today at regular tutor and lunch. So from here, we are going to take out the common factor of the first group, which is x. Then you're left with an x plus what? 4. Okay. The second group, what is this common, Ariana? What's a common factor for the second group? Good job. Then you're left with x also plus 4. Okay. So from here, as you can see, you have this x plus 4 in common. That's something you can factor out. Okay, it's kind of like you keep factoring until you get to the very end. Drop down your GCF over 2, factor out your x plus 4, then you're left with, what's left over? Yes?
I have a question. So
Sure.
we got negative 6 and positive 4. Do you have to write them into the equation of the same order, or can you like write?
Oh, no, you can move things around. Yeah. Yep. So what's left over after we take out x plus 4? X minus 6. Okay. So what McKay's asking is, is it okay for me to do this? X minus 6 times x plus 4. Are those all okay to do? Yeah. Okay. Multiplication, you can move them around and still be okay. Are they all factor out? Yes. So now what do we do when it's already completely factored? What do we do? Take each factor and just set it equal to 0. Okay. But here's the thing. Factor 2, would that ever be 0? No. So that doesn't make sense. So guess what? You just ignore it. Okay. 2 is never 0. So that does not need to be there. So when then we move on to the next factor, x minus 6 equal to 0 or x plus 4 equal to 0. So what is the first x? 6. X equals 6. What's your next x? X negative 4, and then we'll put it together and box it up. So x equals negative 4 comma 6. Box that up. Okay. I'm going to pause for a little bit so you can write it down and then ask questions. How did you get that step? What did you do? Okay.
I was asking like the negative 4, negative 6, and positive 4 inside of the triangle, like when you apply it.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
If I move that first?
Yeah, can you do that?
Yes, you can totally. You can do x squared minus 6x, okay, plus 4x minus 24. Any question on example 2? So the first example is already factored. The second was factoring trinomials. Let's go over to the third one. Caitlin's not here. Third, Joe, can you read me example 3, please?
X cubed minus 420 is 5.
Perfect. Ooh, raise your hand if you think. Mark, what do you think you want to do?
Subtract 5 from both sides.
Subtract 5 from both sides. Well said. Okay, so you're right. Subtract 5 from both sides. So now we have x to the third minus 125 equals to 0. Okay. So class, if we're going to use the zero product property, guess what your equation has to equal to? 0. It cannot equal to anything else but 0 if you are to use the zero product property. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to show you another way that's not going to. Okay. So now what would you do here? Factor it out? Okay. Raise your hand if you remember. We're going to do something else as well, but this is just a zero product property first, and we'll do another way, okay? Who remembers, by the way, what formula are you thinking about right now?
A minus B.
What formula are we thinking about right now? A cubed minus B cubed. What's the formula? Who remembers the formula? A times negative B times A square plus AB plus B square, okay, equals to 0. Okay, so that's what that is right now. And then I'm going to show you another way that's not a zero product property. So in our problem, it's
A squared minus AB?
A square minus, no sir, okay, because if this is a difference right here, okay, we're going to start out with the difference, okay? And one of my students told me this, and I thought, what a genius girl, okay? She said soap. Anybody have ever heard of this, soap? You've heard of it?
Yeah.
I know, right? It's funky. So can you see that this is the difference of two cubes? Okay. Soap means she started with, Aline, what do you think it was? Same. Okay. And then opposite. And then always positive. So this is what she's saying. If you have a difference of two cubes, the first sign is the same sign. That means it should be minus. Does that make sense so far? Then the next one is, what is that? Opposite. And then the very last one is always positive. Okay, so she told me that. I was like, okay, well, you know, that's catchy. I'll share it with the rest of my students. So that's where soap comes from. Okay. So here we go. On your problem, your A is not an A, actually. What's your A? What's your A? No. An X. So this really is something to the third minus something to the third equals 0. This is an X goes here. What to the third gives me 125? 5. All right. So your A is actually X. What's your B? Minus 5. And then A squared is now what? X squared plus what? 5x, or x times 5 is 5x, plus b squared. What's b squared? 25, because b is 5, 5 squared is 25, so we're going to write that down, and we're going to set it equals to 0. Okay, now this is using the zero product property. And as you know, this is as far as you can go in factoring difference and sum of two cubes. So from here, we're going to take x minus 5 equals 0, x squared plus 5x plus 25 equal to 0. Is that okay with all of us? On the left, what does x come out to be? 5. Okay, x equals 5. On the right, would you agree that I should try to factor that trinomial? Okay, so I'm going to make my x. On top of my x, I would get 25, and the bottom I get 5. Is it possible for me to come up with two numbers when you multiply gives you 25 and add maybe 5? No. Okay. So no. So right now that's not possible. So would you agree that that trinomial cannot go any further? Okay. That's what the formula stops at, the trinomial. So right now we don't have all the skill to go further. Right now, because it's not factorable, I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, so that side doesn't have any answers. Does that make sense so far? Later we'll add imaginary answers and whatnot. But right now I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, so how many answers do I have here? How many real answers do I have here? Just one. X is just equal to 5. Okay, so we'll box that up. And then Ryan said, well, there's another way of solving that does not involve using the zero product property. Okay. So I'm going to write that over here with maybe a different colored marker. So x to the third minus 120 equals 5. Ryan, what are you thinking about? How about if I move the 120 to the right side? Would that be okay? Okay. So some of you saw this and said, you know, what if I choose to do this? Because it's not zero product property, but it's not wrong. You can only do this when sometimes. Okay. Anybody know how to undo the power of 3? Yes. Some of you have seen this before, and if you've seen this, yeah, feel free to do that. Okay. Would you agree? X to the third, there's 3x in there. Okay. And the third root means how many identical things do I need to even simplify? 3. And even the 125, would you agree? It's also the same. So as you can see, for this question, you can do either method. And that's the beautiful thing about math. You can always have different ways of solving. Either way will be the same. Yeah, Joe?
What if it doesn't come out to like a perfect cube like that one does?
What do you mean?
And what if it doesn't
then you simplify as far as you can. So let's say if that's a third root of 120, which is obviously not a perfect cube, right? Then you simplify just like normal simplifying. What's square root of 10? You know what I mean? Just normal simplifying. Then you leave it as is. Okay. So either system is the same. Okay. So Joe was saying this. What if like I have the square root or third root of, let's say, like 36? Okay. Well, that's, would you agree? 36, if I were to break down to prime, that's going to be 2 times 18. Yes or no? And then 18 is 2 times 9. And then 9 is 3 times 3. It's the third root. So as you can see, are there any perfect trinomials in there? No. So with that, then you leave it as is, because you can't go any further. Third root of 36 is a decimal. It just not happen to be a nice integer. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
You still want to take that answer?
Oh yeah, you have to. Not everything in life is going to be a nice number for us. Okay. All right. Next example. We only have 3 more, and these are These are all different in ways of solving. Okay. Okay. Example 4. Can you help me read example 4, Daniela? Perfect. Again, you can solve this 2 ways. Use the zero product property or not. What would you do first if you choose to use a zero product property? Huh? Find the GCF. Perfect. Well said. Is there a GCF between a 9x squared and a minus 64? No. So can we factor? Yes. What are we thinking? Perfect square, the difference of 2 squares. True or false? That means it's a square minus b square. What are the factors of perfect of 2 squares? A square minus b square. Even if you have to flip back a couple of notes pages. What is it? Oh, just give me the formula first. A minus b times the quantity of? No, this is a difference of 2 squared, not 2 cubes. Heidi? Just a plus b. Well said. Okay. So 9x squared, what's square root of that? Right. So my factors will be 2 factors equal to 0. One's positive, one's negative. Can you guys see the factors here? Okay. So that's going to be 3x here. That means 3x is on this side as well. And then 64. What do we, 8, okay. Those are completely factor. What do we do? Split it up. 3x plus 8 equals 0. 3x minus 8 equals 0. Go ahead and solve for those 2 for me, and then I'm just going to call you guys to give me the final answer, and I'll box it up down here. Leave it as fractions, okay? It's a lot quicker than using it. Mark, can you tell me how to solve the left-hand side, please? Okay. And both sides by what? 3. So x just come out to be negative 8/3. Can you help me solve, Kimmy, the right side, please? Divide by 3. And then answer, 3. And then just positive. Okay. So x equals positive and negative 8 divided by 3. Can I write it like that? Yes or no? Sure. You can write x equals negative 8/3 and positive 8/3. Okay. Anybody know another way of solving without using the zero product property? Okay.
Like, well, could anyone else try this so you can just add 64 to the other side?
Okay, let me write the question over. Okay. Oops, 64. You're right. Okay. You can add 64 to both sides, and then now what?
You divide by 9.
Divide by 9. Okay. Can I simplify 64 over 9, by the way?
No.
No. And then what next? Okay.
And then you just solve it out.
How do you undo the square root? I mean, I just gave you the answer. How do you undo the power of 2? Sophia? Radical. But class, every time you take a square root, how many answers do we get? 2. Thank you. So make sure you write yourself a note. Dear self, every time I take a square root, I should have 2 answers. What's square root of 64? 8. What's square root of 9? Yep. Either way, can you see that you can have the same answer? Okay. But this note said solve by factoring, so that's why I start with factoring. Okay. But I'm just showing you an alternative way of solving. Okay, so these are just multiple ways of getting to the correct solutions. Number 5. Paige, can you help me with number 5, please?
6x squared plus 7x.
Great. What to do? Ryan? Yes, take out the x. You are perfectly right. Take out the x. So you are left with what, Sophia?
6x plus 7.
Yep. Class, is that as far as you can go? Yes. So guess what you do? You take each factor and you set equal to 0. All right, you try, solve for the rest, and I'll call on you to give me the final answer. Alden, can you tell me what to do from here?
Subtract 7 on both sides.
You mean take each and set equals to 0? Okay, take each and set equal to 0. Okay, and then you said subtract 7 from both sides. Okay, so now you have 6x equal to? Good, what's next, Arden?
Divide both sides by 6.
Good. Okay, so x is negative 7 divided by 6. How many answers do we have, guys? 2. X is at 0, comma, negative 7 divided by 6. Perfect. Okay, here we go. Last problem of the day. Bouquet, what do you think we need to do here?
I think you take out the x or you can move the 6 over. I'm not sure.
What do you think we need to do? Ryan?
Wait, I think you just subtract 6.
Okay. Joey?
You have 6 to it.
Right. Okay, so class, you have to add 6 to both sides. Joe?
Could you factor out the x first?
I'm gonna do what Joe's saying. And then don't write this, please. And then what do you think you need to do, Joe?
Add the 6 over, but I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, you can't. Okay, so here's the thing, Joe. Even when you add the 6 over, would you agree that these are not factors? So I can't take each and set equal to 0, right? So when it equals to something, try to make sure it equals to 0 first, because that's the only way that we can use the 0 product property, okay? So add 6 to both sides like Joey said, okay? So now we end up with 4x squared plus 25x plus 6 equal to 0. Should we try to, is it a GCF? No. Should we try to make an x for it? Okay, go ahead, make your x. On top looks like I have what? And then the middle, okay, so go ahead and find the numbers to fill your x. We'll give us 2 minutes. Factor it all the way. Go ahead and solve it if you can. Once you're done, can you please compare it with your neighbors? I'll put 2 minutes on the clock and come back. If you're stuck, please talk to your neighbors as well. You're done, talk to your neighbors. You're stuck, talk to your neighbor. Either way. If you know how already, you can use that later, but right now we're trying to get to the factoring scale. Yeah, that will be our next step.
So I know that. Wait, G 24, 27.
Right though.
Well, it'd be 24 and 1.
Now it's that.
24 and 1.
Are there such numbers on the sides of X?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Once you have an answer, can you share with your neighbors? Shoulder partner, okay, back partner, front partner. If you're stuck, also ask your partner. Okay, on top of the X, if you use the system, okay? Shaughnessy, did you use the X system? Can you tell me what you put on the top? I'm sorry, 24. Can you tell me what you put on the bottom? And then did you find the two side numbers? Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to drop the 4x down. I'm going to drop the 6 down. The replacing 25x. Aline, what am I taking out in replace of 25x? Perfect. Aline, do you do the x system or no? Sometimes. It depends. Yeah, that's okay. So we're going to factor by grouping. If this is where we are at, okay, Izzy's not here. Haley, what do you think the first group has in common? Good. So we have 4x plus 1. Second group, what do you think, Hannah? Second group, what do they have in common? Yeah. And this might be different from what you have in your paper. Is that still okay? Yeah. You can end up with 4x plus 1. Okay. Now this is the thing that you want to aim for. Do we have a common group? Okay. Yeah, so if we have a common group, it's kind of like a common term. That means we can factor a bit more. Then we're left with x plus 6. So now this is what's called completely factor. Take each and set it equal to 0. So on the left side, Jennifer, can you assist me to solve on the left side?
So you're going to minus 1 from 0, and then you'll do 4x equals negative 1, and then it'll just be negative 1 over 4.
Okay, x equals negative 1/4. On the right side, Nick A, can you assist me on the right side?
Subtract 6 and you get x equals negative 6.
Perfect. Final answers, x equals negative 1/4, comma, negative 6. Box it up, and we are done. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop my recording. Can you tell me if